All right, boys and girls, this is Math Message 3-3. This is a main math lesson of the day. And in this lesson, we're going to be able to add three-digit numbers using the partial add-in strategy. And I'll show you what I mean by that here in a couple of minutes. Now, guys, we're going to learn a couple of different addition strategies in this unit. And so a couple of them, if you're doing this math at home, your parents might get a little bit confused by this strategy, and they might be tempted to just want to show you their old-fashioned traditional way of solving the problem. And that's okay, but boys and girls, I would really like for you to ask your parents to please be patient with us. Go ahead and work with these strategies that we're going to be showing you in this unit, because I promise you that by doing these other strategies first, you're going to really understand addition and understand place value, which is really going to help you to do that old-fashioned way a lot better. Once we teach you that, and I promise we're getting there, we're going to teach you that old-fashioned way to do math that your parents are used to. I promise we're going to get there, but we're going to show you a couple different strategies that's going to make you understand why that strategy works. Okay, so just be patient. Now, in order to do this, guys, we're going to go ahead and warm up. Let me go back a few pages here. We're going to warm up with doing some expanded form, because to do this partial sums addition, we really need to remember how to do expanded form. So go ahead and grab a piece of paper or a whiteboard. Pause the video if you need to. Okay, and now I want you to write each of these numbers in expanded form. Now, when I say expanded form, I kind of think of like blowing up a balloon, and when you blow up a balloon, it expands, it gets bigger. And so we're going to take this number and we're going to expand it. We're going to look at each of the digits, so this number 189. We're going to look at each digit and write out the value of each digit. So this 1 is in the hundreds place, so it's really 100. This 8 is in the tens place, so it's really 80. And this 9 is in the ones place, so it's really 9. And then we put that little plus sign in between. So 189, written in expanded form, is 189. It's kind of like saying the number real slow and writing out each of the parts. All right, now you go ahead and on your whiteboard or piece of paper, write 325 in expanded form. Pause the video. All right, so you should have taken the 3 is really in the hundreds place, so that digit is really, the value is 300. The 2 is in the tens place, so the value is 20. And the 5 is in the ones place, so the value is 5. 325. All right, write 603 in expanded form. Pause the video. Okay, this 600, or the 6 is in the hundreds place, so the value is 600. The 0 is in the tens place, but because it's a 0, the value is just 0. And then the 3 is in the ones place, so that value is 3. So we have 603. All right, write 991 in expanded form. Pause the video. This 9 is in the hundreds place, so it's worth 900. This 9 is in the tens place, so its value is 90. And the 1 is in the ones place, its value is 1. So we have 991. All right, the last two, go ahead and write 2050 in expanded form. All right, this 2 is in the thousands place, so its value is really 2,000. The 0 is in the hundreds place, but its value is 0. The 5 is in the tens place, so its value is 50. And this 0 is in the ones place, but its value is 0. So we have 2,050. And now write 4,002 in expanded form. Pause the video. All right, this 4 is really in the thousands place, so the value is 4,000. This 0 is in the hundreds place, but its value is 0. This 0 is in the tens place. Whoops, didn't mean to write a comma there. So its value is 0. And the 2 is in the ones place, so its value is 2. 4,002. 2. All right, so understanding expanded form is going to help you as we're working on the partial add-in strategy, because partial add-ins means we are going to be adding each of the parts individually. All right, so let's look at a couple examples. All right, when we are doing partial add-ins addition, we are going to take each of the parts and add them individually. So we're going to start here. We have 145 plus 322. We are going to start, for the strategy, we'll go ahead and we can start in any of the place values, really, but we'll go ahead and start with the hundreds place. So we're going to come off to the side here. This 1 is in the hundreds place, so it's really 100. And this 3 is in the hundreds place also, so its value is 300. Okay, and when I add 100 plus 300, I get 400. And now we're going to add the digits in the tens place. So I'm going to come down below here, and I'm going to write the 4. The value of the 4 is really 40. And the value of the 2 is really 20. And so when I add 40 plus 20 together, remember 4 plus 2 is 6, and then I just add that 0 on. So my answer is 60. Now I need to make sure that when I'm writing my numbers that I'm still lining up my hundreds, my tens, and my ones. That's going to be really important that I'm lining those numbers up correctly. If I were to write the 60 like this, then boys and girls, I put the 6 in the hundreds place. It's lined up right below the hundreds, and I don't want that, okay? 60 needs to be lined up so that the 6 is in the tens place. Okay, and then I am going to add up the values in the ones place. And so I have 5 plus 2, and 5 plus 2 is 7. Okay, and so now that I've added up each of the parts, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add up all of those numbers together. So I have, in my ones place, I have 0 plus 0 plus 7, so my answer is 7. In the tens place, I have 0 plus 6. So I'm going to put the 6 in the tens place. And in the hundreds place, I have 4. And then I don't have anything else in my hundreds place. So my answer is 467. Okay, let's try another. Okay, on your whiteboard, go ahead and write down 269 plus 475, and go ahead and write it vertically like this so that the hundreds are lined up, the tens are lined up, and the ones are lined up. Okay, hopefully you've paused the video, given yourself time to do that. Now let's go ahead and just add this one together. Again, we're going to start in the hundreds place. So I'm going to look at my digits in the hundreds place. This 2 is really 200. So I'm going to come over here, give yourself some room to work. And the 4, the value of the 4 is really 400. So I'm going to add my 200 plus my 400, and that's going to give me 600. Okay, now I'm going to add the digits in the tens place. Okay, the value of the 6 is really 60. The value of the 7 is really 70. And so when I add those two together, remember guys, I can just think, well, 6 plus 7 is 13, and then I'm going to put my 0 on the end of it. So 13 with a 0 on the end of it is 130. Remember to keep those digits lined up with your hundreds, your tens, and your ones. And then I'm going to add the digits in the ones place. So the value of the 9 is 9, and the value of the 5 is 5. And when I add those two numbers together, I get 14. All right, so now I am ready to add all of these columns. I'm going to add up my ones. 0 plus 0 plus 4 is 4. I'm going to add up my tens. 3 plus 1 is 4. And I'm going to add up all of my hundreds. 600 plus 100 is 700. Okay, so my answer is 744. All right, let's try another example. How about if you get out your workbook, and we are going to turn to page 69 in your workbook. So page 69, pause the video so you can get yourself ready. Okay, now looking at the sample, they have an example here for you, and they took the 329 plus 418. And boys and girls, look what they did first. First, they did an estimate. That way, and we're going to get into the habit of making an estimate before we add. That way, once we add, we can see if our answer makes sense. So look what they did for the example. They took 329 and they said, well, 329 is really close to 300, and that's easier to add. And 418 is really close to 400. And these numbers are easier to add, so 300 plus 400 is 700. So once I get my real answer should be close to 700. Okay, then they took these numbers, 329 plus 418, and they wrote them like this, where they wrote them vertically, where they're stacking. They lined up the hundreds, they lined up the tens, and they lined up the ones. And that's going to be really important when you rewrite your numbers, that you're really lining those up carefully. Okay, then just like in the samples that we did earlier, they took the hundreds, they did 300 plus 400, got their 700. Then they added up their tens, they did 20 plus 10 and got 30. And then they added up their ones, 9 plus 8, and got 17. Then they went ahead and they added all of their columns. They got 7, 3 plus 1 is 4, and 7 plus nothing there is 7. So 747. Now when you look at your estimate to see if your answer makes sense, 747 is pretty close to 700. So you know that your answer is probably correct because it does make sense to your estimate. All right, so let's do one of these together. So I have 143 plus 28. Now let's do our estimate first. 143 is really close to, what is 143 really close to? And you could either round it to the nearest tens or you could round it to the nearest hundreds. I'm going to go ahead and say 143 is really close to 140. All right, and then I'm going to take my 28. 28 is really close to 30. Now these are easy numbers to add, right? 140 plus 30. So my answer should be close to 170. All right, now let's rewrite this number vertically. So I'm going to write 143 plus 28. And remember, boys and girls, it's so important to line up your place values. There's not going to be anything right here in the hundreds place because 28 doesn't have any hundreds. Make sure you're lining your numbers up correctly. All right, pause the video if you need time to write that down. Okay, now let's do this together. So let's add the digits in the hundreds place. We have 100, and then we have a 0. So 100 plus 0, my answer is just going to be 100. And then I'm going to add up my digits in the tens place. So I have my 40 plus my 20. 40 plus 20 is 60. Make sure that you write it in the correct place. If you put that 6 underneath the 1, you're saying that's 600. Okay, and then I'm going to add my 3 plus my 8. And 3 plus 8 is 11. All right, and now I'm going to get ready to add all of my columns. I have 171. Now my estimate was 170, so I'm pretty confident that my answer is correct because it's really close to my estimate. All right, boys and girls, I want you to pause the video. I want you to try these next two on your own, and then you can play the video to check your work. All right, so I'm going to go through these very quickly, and let's check your work. First, we're going to make our estimate. 195 is really close to 200. 537 is really close to, you could have rounded that to 500. You could have rounded it to 540. I'm going to go ahead and round it to 540 because that's still pretty easy to do. 200 plus 500, so I got 740 is what my answer should be close to. All right, now let's go ahead and write those numbers vertically here. All right, and now I'm going to do each place value. I'm going to do my hundreds, so I've got 100 plus 500, which would be 600. Then I'm going to do my tens place. I've got 90 plus 30, so that gives me, let's see, 9 plus 3 is 12 with a 0 on the end of it, right? 120. And then I've got my 5 plus my 7, and that is going to give me 12. I got to make sure that I'm writing those numbers. Let me extend my page here a little bit so I have some room. All right, so now I got to make sure that those are all lined up. So my hundreds, my tens, and my ones are lined up. And now I can just add my columns. So I've got 732, which is really close to my estimate of 740. So I'm pretty confident I got that answer correct. All right, now let's look at 378 plus 439. Let's do our estimate. 378 is really close to, I'm going to round it to 380. I'm going to show you something. And then 439 is really close to 440. Now, boys and girls, you may have rounded these numbers differently. And I did this on purpose. I rounded it to the nearest tens. But then when I look at these numbers, I'm going to be honest with you, those numbers are still not easy for me to add in my head. So I'm going to choose one of these numbers and round it to the nearest hundreds. I'm going to go ahead and choose the 380 because that's actually pretty close to 400. So I'm going to change this to 400. Is this easier to add in my head? Absolutely, because the only thing I'm adding is my hundreds place. So I've got 840. So you see how I rounded it to the nearest tens? Those were easier numbers, but yet when I went to add them, it still wasn't that easy. So it's okay to then maybe take one of those numbers and round it to the nearest hundreds. Really make your life easier. All right, now you should have written your number out. Just like that. All right, now let's go ahead and add up our place values. So I've got my 300 plus my 400, which gives me 700. I've got my 70 plus my 30. When I add 7 plus 3, that's 10 with a 0 on the end. That's 100, right? And then when I add my 8 plus my 9, I've got 17. Make sure you keep those place values all lined up. So now I can add my hundreds and my tens and my ones. And my answer is 817. And is that pretty close to my estimate of 840? And that is pretty close, isn't it? All right, so boys and girls, this is partial sums addition. Now I'm going to show you something, okay? Now that I made you write all of this out for this lesson, I want to show you how you could actually do this a lot easier without even having to write out all of that expanded form. So I'm going to take my 378 again, plus my 439, and again, make sure I write it nice and neat so my hundreds, tens, and ones are all lined up. Now, instead of writing all of this crazy stuff over here, I'm just going to go ahead and just do it like this. Watch this. So 300 plus 400. I know that this is in the hundreds place. 3 plus 4, right, is 7, but that's in the hundreds place. And then I'm going to add up my 70 plus my 30. And I know that 7 plus 3 is 10, but it's going to have a 0 on the end because 70 plus 30 is 100. And then I'm going to add my 8 plus my 9, which is 17. So all the same things, except I left out writing all of this stuff off to the side. So that might be a strategy that maybe you want to keep this partial add-in strategy, but once you get really good at it, you can kind of leave out all of this extra writing over here. All right, boys and girls, that is partial add-ins addition. Tomorrow we're actually going to learn another addition strategy called column addition.